When I was 12 years old, my mom had just started trusting me enough to be home alone. This had to be when I was 12. We lived in a peaceful, ordinarily safe little town. Quiet streets, spacious yards, friendly neighbors, and a charming little village with a bunch of shops and restaurants. It really wasn't the kind of place where you needed to watch your back at night if you were walking alone. It just felt safe. That's part of the reason my parents trusted me to be home by myself at such a young age. I still live with my parents today in the same house. The night in question was a weekend. My parents were leaving me home alone for the night. When we were really little, my grandparents would watch my older sister and me, but since my sister wasn't home for whatever reason, and since I was old enough, my parents decided to trust me on my own. My parents had us young, so they were often more active. They would go out on weekends with friends or travel. They left me some money for pizza for dinner. It was the ideal night for a 12-year-old alone at home. Video games all night and pizza for dinner. I had been obsessed with James Bond video games as a kid, so I was playing a game called Nightfire on my PS2, probably on my third playthrough. After finishing the game, I decided to order pizza. There was a pizza place right by our house called Johnny's. It's been closed for years now, but back then it was one of our family's go-to pizzerias. I ordered a regular pie. At 12, I could easily eat 3 slices by myself. My mom told me to wrap the leftover slices in tinfoil and put them in the fridge. While waiting for the pizza, I switched discs for another James Bond game, Agent Under Fire. When the doorbell finally rang, I hurried downstairs with the $20 my parents had left me. My mom told me to tip $4. It was only 3 blocks away, so it wasn't a bad tip, especially back then. The delivery driver was a man in his 30s. He looked a little rough, with a long, scraggly beard, glasses, and a black trucker's hat. I handed him the $20 and asked for specific change. As he handed me the box and counted the change, he looked up at me, then passed me into the house and asked, "You alone here?" I knew it was a creepy question. My parents had taught me well about being wary of strangers. I said, "My parents are on their way home." In retrospect, I could have just said no, but I knew he was asking because there were no cars in the driveway and a kid was accepting the pizza instead of an adult. After handing me the change, I closed the door. I ate 3 slices in the kitchen, wrapped the rest in foil, and put them in the fridge. Then I went back upstairs to play Agent Under Fire. Hours went by. It was probably around 11 p.m. when the doorbell rang again. Naturally, I thought it was my parents, so I rushed downstairs and said through the door, "Mom? Dad?" But an unfamiliar voice answered, "Hey, I need help." I asked, "Who is this?" The man repeated, "I just need to use a phone." I didn't want to peek through the window because I was genuinely scared. I decided to go upstairs and ignore it. Common sense alone told me opening the door would be a horrible, horrible idea. As I was walking up the stairs, which were directly in front of the front door, I heard him bang on the door and say, "Wait, please, I need help." What that meant was that he had seen me. He was watching through the glass at the top of the door. I turned around, and even though it was dark on the front porch, I could still make out the outline of the man's head. I couldn't see his eyes, but it was obvious he was staring back at me. I ran upstairs straight to my parents' room. The only phone upstairs was in their room, so I picked it up immediately and called my mom's cell. I didn't know my dad's number at that age. My mom answered, likely a few glasses of wine in, and I told her that someone was at the door asking to come in. That comment seemed to sober her up instantly. I remember her tone shifting dramatically. She sounded louder and much more concerned. She asked me a few questions. First, whether I had answered the man or made him aware I was home. I told the truth, I had. Then she asked who it was. Her voice grew even anxious as she asked if there was any reason someone would know I was home alone. Immediately, I thought of the pizza guy. I told her that the pizza guy had asked if I was alone. Around that time, the doorbell rang 2 more times. Panicking, I told my mom that the man wouldn't leave. She instructed me to stay put in their room and keep the bedroom door locked. She said they were calling the police. My mom kept me on the line while they made the call using my dad's phone. They had to leave the restaurant they were at to go outside so they could communicate properly. It was a summer night. The windows were all cracked open to let in air.
Through my parents' window, I heard the gate on one side of the house leading to the backyard opening. It made a discreet, gentle sound. I told my mom and she kept repeating to stay quiet, stay in the room, and keep the lights off. I whispered into the phone, "What if he tries getting in through the den window?" My mom told me to just stop talking and wait for the police. She continued giving me updates from the police, including their ETA, while reminding me not to make a sound. I was starting to calm down a bit when I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps downstairs, someone moving inside the house. I whispered in panic to my mom, and I heard her scream something to the other phone. Probably, "The man is inside the house, hurry up!" She told me to hide under the bed and wait. For my 12-year-old self, this was the most horrific, unreal moment of my life. The only thing keeping me feeling relatively protected was the tiny lock on my parents' bedroom door. I heard footsteps coming up the stairs near my sister's and my bedroom down the hall. My parents' bedroom was further down. The footsteps faded for a few moments, probably as the intruders searched our bedrooms. My mom told me the police would force their way in and that I shouldn't move until they were inside. The footsteps came down the hallway until they reached the bedroom door. The person pressed on the doorknob only to find it locked. They tried a few more times as if it would magically open. Then came light knocking, but the person on the other side didn't speak a word. They tried the doorknob one last time before walking back down the hallway and stairs, fading deeper into the house. I did my best not to cry the entire time. I didn't even whisper into the phone. I was too scared to make the slightest sound. Finally, my mom told me the police were there, but to stay put. I expected to hear them kick down the door, but instead I suddenly heard heavy footsteps and a man shouting my name, identifying himself as a police officer. I heard them coming up the stairs, and my mom gave me permission to answer the door and unlock it. When I opened the door, there were 2 officers upstairs and 2 more downstairs. They didn't have to kick down the front door. The back door had been left completely ajar, and the sliding back window was also open, the obvious original entry point. I had to talk with the police and tell them everything, including my suspicion of the pizza guy, while my parents listened on the phone. By the time my parents arrived, there were only 2 officers left in the house. The police took a report, noting my suspicion about the pizza guy, and said they would conduct their investigation.
The next night, my parents took me to Gianni's Pizzeria and asked me to point out the delivery guy if I saw him. When I didn't see him, they asked the manager which employee matched the description I had given. He said it would be Phil, who was currently out on a delivery. After explaining the whole scenario, the manager insisted there was no way it could have been Phil and asked us to leave the premises. Long story short, my parents made a big scene at the pizzeria and told them they would never give the restaurant our business again. We went out to the car and waited in the parking lot for almost an hour. When the guy never showed up, we left. My parents assumed it might have been because the manager called or texted the employee, which caused him not to return, but who really knows? They contacted a few lawyers afterward, but none would take the case due to a lack of solid evidence, saying it would be a waste of time. Ultimately, we never went back to that pizzeria. For a long while after that, my parents didn't feel comfortable leaving me home alone again because of the incident. Ultimately, I still believe it was the pizza guy, or at least someone associated with him. After all, who else would have known that I was home alone that night?
When I was a teenager, my parents and I moved from California to a secluded area in North Idaho. My parents had just retired and built their dream home deep in the backcountry. We had no neighbors in sight, just forest. Endless, dense forest that backed right up to national parkland and paper mill logging grounds. The house was massive, 2 stories, a gym, a full bar and pool room, and a legit movie theater set up in the basement. It felt like the kind of house people dream of, remote, quiet, perfect. Or so it seemed. I was dating my high school girlfriend at the time. One night, while my parents were out on a date downtown, I invited her over to hang out and watch a movie. We were completely alone. I cracked open a beer, I was underage but figured no one would care, and we headed down to the movie room to watch Gladiator. Everything started out normal, but somewhere around the midpoint of the movie, maybe close to midnight, something switched in me. Out of nowhere, I was overwhelmed with this fight or flight feeling. It was like my body sensed something my brain couldn't see. My heart was pounding, and I kept glancing at the uncovered windows behind us that looked out into the pitch-black woods. I didn't want to freak out my girlfriend, so I kept it to myself. In fact, things got a little heated between us during the movie, but the whole time, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I didn't know from where, but I knew. After the movie ended, I walked her upstairs and out to her car. The house was dead quiet again. She drove off, and I turned to go back inside when I remembered I'd left the bar, pool room, and movie room lights on. I went back downstairs and turned off the lights in the movie room first, then paused. My eyes drifted to the large window that looked into the backyard. That's when I saw him. A man. He looked homeless, wild hair, filthy clothes, but what froze me in place was his expression. He had the biggest, creepiest smile I've ever seen, with wide, staring eyes that looked absolutely deranged. In his hand was a knife, gently tapping it on the glass over and over. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. I slowly backed away and went to the bar room to shut off the rest of the lights. That room has a sliding glass door that also faces the woods. I flipped the switch and watched in horror as the man calmly walked from the window to the door, still smiling, still staring. At this point, we were less than a foot apart, just the glass between us. He didn't try to get in, he didn't move at all, he just watched me. I went upstairs without a word. Right then, my parents were walking through the door. I told them, "I think I need to go to the psych ward or something. I swear I just saw a guy with a knife watching me outside." My mom went pale. My dad's eyes narrowed, and without a word, he grabbed his rifle from the gun safe and stormed out to check the property. I asked my mom what was going on. She said there have been a few break-ins in the area. A guy wandering through the woods trying to get into homes. The description you gave matches exactly. The police were called but didn't find anything. No signs of entry, no footprints, just cold, black woods. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. That night, as I tried to sleep, I could hear a light tapping sound beneath me. My bedroom was on the second floor, directly above the movie room. It sounded like metal gently tapping glass. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. The tapping lasted for hours. This happened night after night for weeks. Sometimes it would stop. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and hear it faintly again. I even thought I heard footsteps on the roof one night. I checked the windows but never saw anyone. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being stalked, watched. Then winter came. My parents had to go out of town for a few days, but they were still nervous. Before leaving, they gave me a shotgun. We also had a big Rottweiler, the sweetest dog, totally silent unless something was really there. One night while home alone, I heard slow, deliberate, crunching footsteps in the snow outside. The dog stood up, ears perked, growling low and deep at the front door, then barking ferocious, loud, and non-stop. He only ever did that when he saw something real. I stayed silent, not wanting whoever was out there to know I was home. Then came the knock, slow, hollow, taunting. I didn't answer. That night, I slept with the shotgun next to me, door locked, blinds drawn, dog at my feet. The next morning, I went outside and saw fresh human footprints circled around the entire house. They stopped at every window, like someone was trying to look in, searching for me. I followed the prints into the forest for half a mile before they started to zigzag and loop back, as if the person was trying to throw me off. That night, the tapping came back louder. I knew it was him. I unlocked my door, grabbed my shotgun, and stepped onto the second-story deck. I flipped on the fog lights that illuminated the backyard. There he was, the same man, same smile, same dead eyes, holding the knife again, staring directly at me. I raised the shotgun and shouted, "If you don't leave, I'll put one right through you."
He didn't move or flinch, just stared unblinking, grinning. I fired a warning shot into the air. He staggered a bit, then slowly backed into the woods, still facing me. That's when I unleashed the dog. I sprinted downstairs, threw open the sliding door, and let him loose. He bolted into the forest like a black missile, barking and snarling. He had a shot collar, so he couldn't go far, but I like to think he chased that guy off for good. After that night, I never saw him again. This happened in March 2022, during spring break. I was in my second year of college. My friends and I, 6 of us total, decided to rent a cabin in South Carolina for a few days to get away from everything. No school, no stress, no phones. It was supposed to be a quiet trip, drinking, music, and maybe making some memories. The cabin was out in the woods, 2 stories, wraparound porch, private land near a lake. It was way out there, no towns for miles, surrounded by forest. The owner warned, "Don't wander too deep into the woods. Old wells, busted fences, snakes." We laughed it off, thinking it was just southern charm. But when we arrived, the cabin was older, dirtier, dusty windows, faint smell like old garbage and wet wood. The first night, we grilled outside, played music and games. By 2 a.m., it got cold, so we moved inside. That's when I noticed how dark the woods were. Pitch black, dense, pressing in. Around 4:15 a.m., I woke up to a tapping sound at my window. There he was, a man pressed up against the glass, pale, wild hair, no shirt, wide staring eyes, soft, slow tapping, like teasing. I whispered for Matt, who saw him, and he scared him off with the porch light. The next morning, we saw bare human footprints circling around the cabin, stopping at every window, even upstairs shower windows. Night 2, same setup, but tension higher. Around 3:30 a.m., the man appeared inside the cabin, naked, scratched, and swaying in front of the fridge. We armed ourselves, turned on the lights, and he was gone, back door wide open but not forced. We left shortly after, drove to get signal, and informed the sheriff. The deputy said, "Yeah, we've had trouble with folks squatting in those woods." The cabin listing disappeared shortly after. We never got answers or our deposit back. That face, the way he looked at me through the window, I still see it sometimes when I wake up at night. We haven't been back since.
It was the summer before my senior year of high school. My parents had gone on a short weekend trip, leaving me to watch the house. We lived in a quiet, rural area, miles from the nearest neighbor. Our home was surrounded by thick woods, with a long gravel driveway and no streetlights anywhere close. Nights, pitch black. Every sound carried far too clearly. That Saturday, I invited my best friend over. We grilled some food, played video games, and by midnight we were watching movies in the living room. At some point, I got up to grab a drink from the kitchen, and that's when I heard it. A slow, deliberate knock at the back door, not the front, but the one that opened straight to the woods. At first, I thought it might be some animal brushing against the deck. But then the knock came again, steady and rhythmic. My friend muted the TV, and we just stared at each other. He whispered, "Who would come here at this hour?" I switched on the back light, and my stomach dropped. A man was standing there, almost pressed against the glass. His hair was long, his face pale, and his clothes ragged. He didn't look drunk or lost. He looked like he had been waiting. His hands were flat on the glass, and his grin stretched unnaturally wide. I froze, trying to process what I was seeing. My friend grabbed his phone to call 911, but there was no service. Out here, you had to drive nearly 15 minutes to get a signal. That's when the man tilted his head, like he could hear us whispering. He tapped his fingers slowly on the glass, 3 times, before walking away into the dark woods. We thought maybe it was over, but an hour later, the tapping returned, this time at the living room window, then at the side of the house. He was circling. Every time we turned on a light, he disappeared, only to reappear at another window. At one point, I swear I heard our back gate creak open,
followed by footsteps on the deck above my room. Around 3 a.m., the dog started barking violently at the basement door. I grabbed the old hunting rifle my dad kept in his closet and stood guard at the top of the stairs. My friend locked himself in the bathroom, terrified. For almost an hour, I heard faint scraping sounds from below, like metal dragging against the basement window frame. Then silence. When dawn finally broke, I went outside cautiously. That's when I saw them. Footprints in the damp dirt circling the entire house, stopping at nearly every single window. In the backyard, the footprints trailed off into the woods. We never saw the man again. The sheriff later told my parents about reports of a drifter moving through the county, breaking into homes and cabins. They never caught him. Even now, years later, whenever I hear tapping at night, I remember that smile on the other side of the glass. And I know someone was out there waiting.